The purpose of this film, and it's only a short film, don't worry, it's about health and safety. It's about how you can get the most out of your volunteers and out of your day. We do have to take into account health and safety. The fact that everyone goes home safe and sound at the end of the day is paramount to the success of any volunteer task. The sort of things to consider are, is the site suitable for your size of group of volunteers? Have you got enough room to get everyone coppicing safely at a safe distance apart? Are there any hazards, i.e. is the site next to a busy road which needs taking into account? Is there a public right-of-way through the site whose users might be affected by your activities? Are there any services underground if you're digging or fencing, gas or water or electric that you might interfere with? You need to consider whether you've got enough parking for all of your volunteers, how easy the access is. If you have volunteers, you might find it difficult to come in over stiles, for instance. Some sites are very remote and very often you don't have toilet facilities or washing facilities. You need to make volunteers aware of this in advance, of the conditions they're going to come across, whether they need to bring lunch, what they need to wear. If you're working on a new site for the first time, or you're working with a new group of volunteers, it's important that you do a careful risk assessment. Most of it is basic common sense, but it is worth doing a risk assessment and having a checklist, and then you can be satisfied in your mind that you've been through everything and that your volunteers will be looked after during the course of the day. And a risk assessment will be specific to the site, specific to the task and the tools that you're using, and will also take into consideration the kind of group that you're working with. It's always important to have visited a site and done a thorough risk assessment in advance of the day, but you really need to take into account conditions on the day when you arrive. Make sure you arrive a few minutes earlier. It's a beautiful sunny day here out in the woods. Not a problem, but we could be cutting trees down tomorrow and there'll be a howling gale, and obviously it wouldn't be safe to do so. So it does have to be specific to conditions on the day. For instance, on this site, it's a park in a suburban area. We get a lot of dog walkers, so obviously making sure that people keep their gloves on and wash their hands before they eat. All of those sorts of things are site specific to your risk assessment. Even before you start the task on the day, tools and sometimes volunteers need transporting to the site, and it's important you do this safely. Separate volunteers from tools in transit. Many tools have sharp edges and are heavy, which could cause serious injury if left loose in a vehicle which has to brake suddenly. Keep tools away from windows and don't leave them lying around on bonnets or on roofs. Instruct your volunteers carefully on how to carry tools in the work area, keeping sharp edges away from the body, not carrying tools on the shoulder. Make sure tools are left safely when they're not in use, out of the way, off of a path. Rakes and forks should be left with the points facing downwards. Bow saws should not be left hooked up a tree over your branches. All of the tools should be left in one area, and if possible dedicate one area as a tool store to collect your tools from and to return them to that place. A slasher is a bladed tool with a wooden handle that we use a lot in conservation for clearing brambles and bracken and scrub. Obviously, being a sharp and bladed tool, it's important you use it carefully because you can do yourself or other people some damage with it. It's designed to be used low down to the ground to clear through brambles and bracken. It's not designed to be lifted up above head level. It's designed just to be used fairly low and not with any, doesn't need, if it's sharp, any huge amount of force. Because it's a wooden handled tool, it's not safe to wear gloves when you're using it because you can't get a really good grip on it and you could end up slinging it across towards someone else. Probably the most important thing when you're using a slasher is to work at a safe working distance from your other colleagues, and the safe working distance we work at is 1, 2, 3 lengths of the slasher away from the nearest person working with you. That way you know you're not going to catch anyone else around the ankles. If you need to get past someone who's using a slasher, make sure you ask them to stop. If you see someone coming towards you when you're using a slasher and they're within your safe working distance, stop what you're doing and let them know. One of the tools we use to process trees ready for the fire is a pair of loppers. You can wear gloves with these. You should be reasonably safe because the business end is at a fair distance from your hands. The important thing for the safety of the loppers and yourself is to not overdo it. These will only cut something about the same size as your own thumb. If you try and cut something too large, you're going to break the loppers or you're going to strain yourself. So for anything too large for loppers, we will use a bow saw instead. Okay. The important thing about a bow saw, once again you can wear gloves, is there's a temptation to hold the log really tight and then cut right next to it. Your left hand, or the hand that you're not using, needs to be a really good distance away from the bow saw. And you can go through quite large branches. 1 or 2 strokes backwards to get started, and then use the full length of the blade to go through. It's a good idea to be wearing steel toe cap boots if you are carrying anything heavy. Take special care when you're handling very heavy or awkward objects like logs. Lift by bending your knees while keeping your back straight and not bending your back. Don't be afraid to ask someone else to help you, or don't try to carry more than you are capable of. At the end of the task, make sure you do a sweep of the site so no tools are left lying around. Collect them all together and count them back in. Note any that are damaged or need maintenance before the next task. If you're having a bonfire, make sure it's left in a safe condition or extinguished and can't spread before you leave the site. Make sure you leave the site in a tidy and safe condition.